something a little different today. So one of the things I've been working on lately is my ability to understand what's going on in endgames. And so what I'm doing is taking actual positions from games, especially like blitz games even, with and studying these endings by playing them against the computer. So like here we have a rook and pawn ending. Okay, so I played the white pieces, and I do feel that the first thing we should do is kind of look at what's going on here. So I guess a good question is who is better and why? And also what plans does white have, or what is the main plan for white, and what is the main plan for black? So if you'd like to pause your video, go ahead and do so now, and then I'll share my thoughts. Okay, so here we need to look at the elements of the position. We'll start with a pawn count. So black has 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns, and white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. The only thing is this pawn right here on e6 is very vulnerable. It looks like, black's going to simply capture next move if they like. I don't see a way to save it necessarily, right? Like the rook is blocked by the c pawn, so we can't get to it that way, and the king's too far away. So okay, so it's almost like 4-4 in a way, but that being said, it's not captured yet. So it's like I almost want to call it like, white has 4.2 pawns or something like that, because that pawn is so weak. But now let's look at the pawn structure. So black has a weak pawn on c6. So this pawn is definitely susceptible to attack. Rook a6 would attack it immediately. This rook is defending the pawn, but it's passive here. The rook would definitely like to get active. And also white has a weak d4 pawn. So, the black rook, if at any point, can get on an open file and attack this pawn. That's something black would like to do. Over here on the king side, we've got a 2 versus 1 majority. So this does concern white, I think, that if black gets the chance, they will, push these pawns and create a passed pawn on g3. So this is all possible. So this is a nice asset to black. And the opposite is true for white, though, as well, right? So white is going to be looking to get in this b5 break, and if this occurs, this becomes a passed pawn. So, and then if this is won, let's say by the king or something, then this becomes the passed pawn. So white is looking to create a passed pawn in the center. If given the chance, we'll save this pawn. That's a plan. And we want our rook a little more active. So this white rook is on an open file, so it's on the A file. So this is really nice, but it's not really doing anything. And, and the reason the rook's here is because it just captured something. So it probably captured like a bishop or something like that. I don't totally recall. But this was the starting position of this particular endgame. So this white rook needs to get a little bit more active. Like I would say the a6 square or the a8 square would be more active. So, and the black rook, like I said, wants to not be tied down to this pawn. So that being said, I think the last part I want to talk about is king position, because we looked at pawns and we looked at the rooks. King position. So the black king is closer to the center than the white king. And it's also, as a result, already threatening to do things like take the e6 pawn and then come to d7, where it will guard the c pawn. This in turn frees up the rook to get nasty. And as you'll see, this is exactly what happens in this training game. So Okay, whoops. That's my alarm to wake up, so I'm doing well since I'm already up and studying chess. Okay, so who's better? We talked about the plans already, basically. I would say white's better with an extra pawn, but it's about to be lost. White's pawns are more advanced, and white's rook is slightly more active. So I think, the position's roughly equal, but white probably has a slight edge in terms of winning chances. That's my assessment. The computer says plus 0.8, which to me means that it's probably a draw with perfect play, but white can press for a win here. Okay, so let's go through this training game. I started with the move Rook A6. Yeah, and I'm leaving on the computer. I love this chess.com analysis. This turned out to be a good move. I'm simply putting pressure here on the C pawn so that black cannot play Rook B7 or, maybe come to A7 later. So I just want to tie down the rook with this move, keep my rook extra active. Probably King F4, or not King F3. Probably King F3 is probably also a good move. I want to get, if I can ever get my king to the D6 square, that would be amazing, right? Attacking this. And then this. But I started with the rook move, and this is fine. Okay, so black captures the pawn. They absolutely should. I think, in some lines, white can maybe take here and hold on to that pawn. That is possible. I have seen lines like that. And now it's probably time to bring up the king. So King F3, improving king position. And black plays King D7. So yeah, like I was saying, the idea is to simply defend the C pawn so that the black rook can get active and cause some trouble. So I think the black rook wants to come to the B7 square now and attack my pawn. And if the rook has to go to A3, then you have a situation where the black rook is more active than the white rook. And, if everything is equal here, this plan becomes a threat. So this is what I'm thinking here. And here I played Rook B6. Okay. So this is interesting, So I saw that black wanted to play Rook B7, and I didn't like that. So I tried to stop it with Rook B6. The problem with this is that, by moving my rook to the B file, I'm opening up the A file for the rook. So this is exactly why this move doesn't work. Also, and this is the first thing I learned from this game, you can allow Rook B7 in this position. It looks like I don't want to allow it, right? I mean, it looks like, that's my main plan to push this thing. But, so let's look at this. King F4 is actually the best move and provides a healthy advantage for white. If black does what I'm afraid of, Rook B7, then white has this interesting move, King E5. And the king is suddenly very active and one square away from our dream square of D6. And let's say black gets greedy and takes the pawn. This is the line I calculated in my head that I didn't like. Well, now we have Rook A7 check. And notice that my king's doing a good job walling off the black king. He's forced now to the back rank. So let's say King E8. And now you have things like King E6, and suddenly we have a mate in one threat, Yeah, we could also take this. And it seems like my king is going to get to the dream square of D6. And guess what? This is, in fact, winning for white because we're going to end up with two connected pass pawns. So it's important to see this line so that you don't play a mistake like Rook B6. It's important to see that King F4 is a threat because of King E5, followed by Rook A7 check. So I did not see that line. I played Rook B7. And guess what? This little move, Rook B6, This little move, rook b6, actually gives up all advantage. Now the position is completely equal, according to the computer. I'm not sure I could figure that out myself. Computer says it's completely equal, so with perfect play, it's simply a draw, both sides equal chances. All right, so I gave up the A file, so black occupies the A file. This is what happens. And now what should white do? The problem with this is now the black rook is active. You have to check all these squares. So the A4 square attacking my D pawn is a concern. This is a concern, although my rook is defending the B pawn currently. This is also a concern. So we've got this because of the H pawn being attacked. And then you've got even this just coming in and checking. I meant to put that on F1. Checking my king, annoying my king. I mean, if he starts checking on the first rank, I have to figure out what to do with my king. So yeah, this rook on A7 is excellent. And like I said, the king is tied down to the C6 pawn, which is nice, but my rook can't do much right now. Okay, so what should white do here? Well, I played king F4. I figured I just need to improve my king position. Computer says rook b8 is best. That's not a move I was considering. So let's have a quick look at that. Rook b8, what's the idea there? I was concerned about, something like let's say this move, rook a2, attacking my h pawn. Computer says no problem, play h3. I think now I'd be worried about like rook e2. Computer says rook h2. Oh yeah, definitely a concern. But here I can check. And after king e6, am I grabbing the pawn? I am. So this is an interesting continuation. So they take here. Now, you'd think I'd be concerned about this. King e2. And the problem for black is that, if they take, I take here. And, well, this position's still a draw. So, interesting line. But let's go back. And full disclosure, I'm not going to fully understand all these lines, to be honest, which is entirely why I'm studying this type of thing. Okay, so rook b6, rook a7. But I hope that you have fun learning with me, though. All right, so king f4. Computer says this is good. Position's still equal. And when you're playing against the computer, it's kind of like I'm paranoid because Stockfish is so good at finding ways to just demolish me. And you'll see how the computer does that against me this game. Okay. So the computer played king c7 here. So interesting move. I'm not sure I would see this move, but I think the whole point is to stop rook b7 check. Black wants to move their rook away, but they didn't want me to play rook b7 check with a skewer, winning that g pawn like we saw. So that's the purpose of that move. And the king continues to defend the c6 pawn. Okay, so I played b4. Why? Well, I'm just trying to move forward with my plan here. I want to play b4, b5 like I was talking about. And if I get this in, I'll be able to play rook c6 check and be winning. So I have a three-step plan here. Well, really two-step. I think even on b5 it's pretty good. So that's why I played this move. And I'm happy to see the computer liked it. It does say rook b4 is an alternative. Rook b4. Yeah, Don't totally understand that move. I see that it defends this, but I feel like b4 also defends it. So I guess we'll have to see. don't totally understand that one. Okay, so b4. And the rook infiltrates on a1. So this is one of the squares I was afraid of. And it looks like black has chosen to go for the checking plan. You know, the rook's very active on the first rank. It has full scope to go to any file it would like. It can attack the h-pawn. It can check my king. It can go after the d-pawn. And if my rook moves away, even the b-pawn is suspect. So it has a lot of options here that I must consider. And keep in mind, if black does win my h-pawn, then they have two connected passers on the king side. So definitely don't want to allow that to happen. So what to do is white? Well, I decided, let's see. I decided to proceed with my plan, b5. And I said, go ahead and do your worst, because this does come with the threat of rook takes c6 check. Well, black continue with their plan, rook f1, checking my king. So, yeah, it's like, what do I do with my king? This seems awfully passive to play king g3, and in fact, I think this is probably a mistake. Let's see if it is. It's saying it's a draw still, but yeah, that's kind of a sad move to make. I want to get closer to my dream square. You know, this is a more active way to play. And, well, what are my other options? So you probably saw the computer pointed out king e3 as an option. There's also king e5, looks a little more active. I think this is probably a mistake just because you can get kicked around. Not entirely sure, actually. It's totally fine. So we have some viable options here. And I went with the most active continuation, king e5. Totally fine. Position's still a draw, so I'm not getting crushed by Stockfish yet. And Stockfish chose to check me again. I'm a little embarrassed about how I lost this game, but I also will admit that even though I was playing without a clock, I was getting a little antsy. You know, and I'm not trying to play a 40-move battle with Stockfish trying to hold this position, you know what I'm saying? But just learn a few things, which I think I did. Okay, so here I make basically, I want to call it a losing move because it's Stockfish, and once Stockfish gets an advantage, it's going to be over, but probably it's just a mistake because I do get black an edge after this next move. You have to be really careful where you put your king, you know, and I missed a pretty obvious threat here. So, you know, this square's covered, this square's covered, this square's covered. Okay, so we can't go to the 6th rank. So that leaves, whoops, yeah, g5, no. This square looked like, you know, I have to deal with this check still. Maybe that's okay. Yeah, maybe that's okay. I wouldn't mind if my king, like, started attacking these. I think that's probably okay. Also, if I could escape some checks, you know, I'm still threatening this at some point. But, yeah, I was focused on this silly check, which doesn't do anything bad, and I ended up playing here. Well, guess what? This allows rook e4 check with a fork, winning my d-pawn. So this is just losing because I lose a pawn. I mean, computer can probably still hold this position. So the correct move here was actually to play here, and if this check, that's okay. I just play actually king f6 or king g5. Either way is fine. In fact, I'd probably go here because I want to escape the checks. And then I think, yeah, if they go here, king g7 is fine. And now I am threatening this. So this would occur. And now black can attack the d pawn. And computer is saying this position is a draw, although it still looks complicated to me. I'm wondering if this is coming. This is coming probably, but I also have this. So it's one of those lines where both players are gobbling stuff up, and then maybe just one simplify becomes a draw. Okay, so, but to wrap this up, in the game, whoops, yeah, I'll show you how it finished, I guess. Yeah, in the game, I allowed this rook e4 check idea, so this was a big mistake. I have to go to f5 now, and he takes there first, because computer's accurate, and then checks me, because the computer's extra accurate, and then takes me. So here, I'm down a pawn, and it's not looking good. Yeah, now my h pawn is going to fall. Black's pushing their pass pawn. I thought I'd try and stop it. And I'm just going to fly through this part just so you see how it ends. Just for that nice feeling of satisfaction that the game ended. Yeah, the king's coming up. I'm trying to save my pawn, but computer already wants to give it up. Yeah, and here, what do? This is... It's kind of funny, like the computer won't even take here because it's so confident about winning over here. And the king can take any time it wants. Yeah, and this is just too much. So that's clearly lost. Okay, so we've analyzed this game properly. And now I want to look at the highlights. What did we learn from this game? Okay, well, I think we looked at the ideas and plans that both sides have. Black is probably best to take this pawn right away. So we understood that the e6 pawn was a goner right from the start. And it seems like this whole game is a battle between king position, active rooks, and executing our plans, which the thing I like that I did is I got my rook active and I got my king up and I got my b4, b5 break in this game. Yeah, and this is very interesting to me that rook b6 is inaccurate. So allowing this whole king f4 idea, allowing rook b7 is really interesting to me. So king e5, allowing the capture. This is probably one of the main ideas I learned here because of this continuation, where our king is getting to the dream square. I guess king will go here. Yeah, so the king gets to the dream square and the black king's in a lot of trouble and white's just completely winning here. So had I seen that line, I wouldn't have bothered with the move rook b6. But of course I was trying to set up my plan as well, which it does work. Okay, but that lost all advantage. So bringing the king up more is more important. Yeah, notice that if the rook comes to b7, I can play rook a3. I don't want to, but I could if it helps me get my king up far enough. Okay. Yeah, another key moment. I didn't necessarily see that rook a1 would deliver all these checks during the game. So this idea for black is one that I am now aware of. And especially this, don't blunder. You know, losing a pawn. So I guess that's kind of it. I hope that you enjoyed this study with me, this endgame study, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.